Hello, this is wmpyr. Here to talk about the videos that I've been uploading recently. These are the videos with Mr. Kevin. And first of all, I gotta say a big, huge thank you to Mr. Kevin for coming over and helping me film this for you guys. And yeah, man, it's no joke. We filmed this. It took several hours, and this is in the garage in the hot and humid Texas heat. It was really tough. And then we have to wear masks and stuff, so it really taxes your stamina. It makes you very tired. You need to have some cardio, and yeah, it's brutal. I mean, we were sweating big time and everything, but thanks to Mr. Kevin, who I knew had a very good, strong work ethic, coming from his wrestling background, because he's a very good wrestler. I knew that he was tough, and I knew we could get this done, and he definitely delivered. So anyway, I'm here to talk about some of those videos and try to shed some more light. So the first one was the Eskrima aggressive defense. So first of all, I really want you guys to understand that this is not sparring, okay? This is the first thing we did, so it was just a warm up. We're just trying to get the body loosened up, and more importantly, what I wanted to do, even though we're both wearing gloves, so it is a kickboxing kind of format, right? We're both wearing gloves and we're throwing punches and kicks. So it's kind of a kickboxing format, but mentally, I wanted to get ready for Filipino martial arts training. So mentally, in kickboxing and most other styles, you have offense and you have defense. And you got counters and stuff, but really it's black and white offense and defense. In Filipino martial arts, we have offense, and our defense is very offensive. So that's why the defang the snake concept is, you could also call it attack the attack. So when an attack comes in, I'm not thinking, okay, I'm going to defend against this attack. I'm thinking I'm attacking that attack. So I'm going to shoot it down, is what I'm thinking. So if you think about it, I'm thinking attack the entire time, even when I'm defending. So it's just a mental change. And that's what I wanted us to do right there. So let me go to the next video. The next video is the Eskrima Heaven 6 Blitz, right? And the way the Heaven 6 was taught to me was that it is a versatile technique. So we're talking, you could do this with sticks, you could do this with knives, you could do it empty hand, you could do it for offense, you could do it for defense, you could do it for counters. It's a very versatile technique. So that's why I said a long time ago on YouTube that it is the Swiss Army knife of martial arts techniques. Now, keeping that thought, I thought to myself, why not go further? Let's really get the Heaven 6 and test its versatility and evolve it and progress it in ways to make it even more so that it can adapt to be used for different things. So one of the first things that I wanted you guys to do is, because the way you learn traditionally, you learn the Heaven 6 is with double sticks. You learn it that way with a partner, and you learn it in the air like you're shadow boxing, and then you go partner exercise, and then some people go into double knife Heaven 6, and then also some people do empty hand Heaven 6. And when they go into empty hand Heaven 6, the way it's done is one partner throws a punch, and the other person, they defend, and then they might hit the, not really hit the person, but show that they could hit the person, and then now they take turns. So the other person throws a punch, and of course these aren't real punches, so they stop the punch and let the other person do the technique, and you go back and forth. And that's pretty much the extent for Heaven 6 practice. And to me, to go to the next level, to make it more combat ready. And that's what's I'm very interested in, is to be able to use this stuff for real life self-defense. And my mentality is it's going to take a whole bunch of steps to make it combat ready. So I'll do something here a little bit, and then we'll do something a little bit different. We'll do something this way, that way, this way. And those are all steps to get closer and closer to going towards more and more combat ready. And one of the things is you got to do the Heaven 6 on a punching bag. And in this case, I'm holding a kicking shield, and I'm having Mr. Kevin do the Heaven 6 onto that. And in this case, I'm also moving back a little bit. I also did some circling, so he had to kind of adjust as he's doing that. So it was really good practice in that sense to make it, once again, a little bit more realistic. Also was he had to adjust going from fist to forearm as he got closer. And that was really important. I wanted him to know that that change to go from fist to forearm is automatic. It's not something that you necessarily need to think about. And the other thing is, when you go from fist to forearm, that means now you're in close range. And when you're doing the forearm Heaven 6, you have the forearm between you and your opponent. With just punching, like you could do a chain punch like from Wing Chun, or you could do a straight blast from Jeet Kune Do. Or in MMA, they just call it the blitz. So you're doing the blitz to charge in. And if you get too close, then you might have to switch to elbows or switch to knees or something. But in this case, your forearms are already there, and that's in between you and the opponent. It automatically takes you to grappling. So that's what I really, really like about the Heaven 6, is because you're slashing, it has your forearms there. It's not a punch that's like a projectile, like a missile that flies, and if it hits, it hits. If it doesn't, there's nothing in between. With the Heaven 6, I strike and the forearm is there. And in boxing, they might go, that's not a good thing that you're leaving your arm out, but I want that arm out because I'm going forward to where now I could go into the grappling. And also, if I need to defend against grappling, I want the forearm there. So, and for the people that want to use that to go into level change and do a double leg takedown and stuff like that, it's going to work great for you guys because your hand's already touching the guy. Your arm is already on the guy, touching the guy. But for someone that doesn't want to go on the ground, you want that forearm so that they can't, get to you, pick you up and slam you. So you have that forearm to try to keep that space. And that's what makes it. That's what makes the Heaven 6 so awesome for me in this case. So now let's go to the next video, which is the Eskrima flow drill exercise. So this one also, once again, this is not sparring. It's not meant to be realistic. The idea comes from when I was training in Aikido. I have like around 4 years on and off of Aikido training. And one of the things that I really liked was they did this kind of very soft flow kind of drill where, one person attacks and the other person defends, and the person that's attacking is going nice and slow, kind of like a zombie, so that you don't have to be fearful. You don't have to be like, an attack is coming. You don't have to freak out because with a knife, it's very easy for a person to get scared. And even if they don't admit it, or even if they don't necessarily feel scared, your body's scared. So then you start tensing up and you don't even know it, but you're making these bad habits and stuff. So to ease away from that and to be able to practice your techniques that you know without fear, this is a very good exercise. Now on the flip side, you don't want to just do this kind of exercise only and you get to the point where you're like, I have no fear at all, and then get in a real life situation, you're going to get killed because it should be scary. It is scary. A knife is super dangerous. So what we're looking for is a nice balance. You want to not be too afraid to the point where you can't function, but you also don't want to be fearless to the point where you're trying to do superhuman stuff that is unrealistic. You're in the fantasy world and you will get killed. So the balance is so important. Systema people also, they do this kind of training, and I think they need to balance it out. And to me, the best Systema fighters, the guys that can actually fight, are the guys that have the Systema type of training where they're super soft, but then they also have like the combat sambo type of training where, you know, they know what it's like for two human beings to just bam, and then there's a lot of force and a lot of pressure and combat, you know, combat pressure, combat force. They know how to deal with that as well. So, okay, the next one is the Capoeira Heaven 6, the new type of Heaven 6. So this is once again me trying to take you guys beyond the traditional Heaven 6 and let's evolve it, let's progress it and use it, and let's find all kinds of different ways to use the Heaven 6. So this is one of them right there. And for me, really, back in the day when I was having full contact challenge matches and stuff, I was having a lot of trouble using my Filipino martial arts techniques that I liked so much. I really, really liked Filipino martial arts, but when it became full contact, I was using Muay Thai. I was using BJJ. I was using other stuff. Maybe a tiny bit from, and this is why I like Jeet Kune Do, because the Jeet Kune Do method, the one by Danny Inosanto, influence has some Filipino martial arts put in there, so I was able to use some Filipino martial arts, but there were so many other techniques that I couldn't use in full contact, such as the Heaven 6, and I was very, very disappointed in that. And I was like, man, I want to be able to use this stuff because I spent so much time. But then at that time I was like, I guess I just have to do that just for weapons. If it's weapons, I'll use it, but if it's not weapons, I can't really use it. So that was my mentality at the time, until I went to a capoeira school. The teacher was like, have you ever done capoeira before? And I said, a tiny bit, sir. And he was like, show me what you've done. So I did the Jinga for him. And then he was like, wait. If you're going to do the Jinga, do it right. And he was like, you have to protect the head at all times. And I was like, oh, okay. So when I went home that day, I was like, why can't I apply the same thing that he said to me for the Heaven 6? Let me try it. So I started doing the Heaven 6 up here like this, much more compact and like so. I was like, wait a minute. I think I could use this for full contact now. Wow. So that was the beginning for me. And in this video right here, Kevin is, he's coming at me with a whole bunch of punches. It's almost like he just cornered me. And, you know, there's a time where you watch a boxing match or a kickboxing match where the guy's just kind of like cornered and he just has to completely defend like that. But I didn't want to just do this. So that's like, instead of doing this, why not do the Heaven 6? Because this, you're still taking some damage. And I'm sure if the boxer could do other stuff, they would. They absolutely would. But this, they're doing it because they can't. You have to understand that. If they could, they would rather, you know, bob and weave and counter. Oh, of course they would, but the other guy's good. So when you can't, when things are going really bad for you, they revert to that. So I was like, okay, I could always revert to that, but is there something a little bit better maybe that I can do? But it's not as like difficult as like evade and counter. So something that's high percentage, but still better than just that. And that's where the Heaven 6 fit in for me. The only difference is when you do it with the Heaven 6, and this is something that we found out here, but it was something that I already also knew from, you know, previous experiments, is that you can't stay there and let the other guy just, you know, rain punches at you and you block everything. I mean, to do that, you'd have to be Neo from the Matrix. It's not humanly possible. The closest thing I saw was Anderson Silva, and he was actually pulling off some stuff like, it looked like Heaven 6 to me, a little bit of it. It looked like Wing Chun plus Heaven 6, and he was actually pulling it off, and I was like, that's superhuman. You're not supposed to be able to, that's not To me, that is not the proper way to use it. But he was using it, and I was like, that is insane. That guy is, he's so amazing. He's like superhuman. But anyway, but even then, some of the punches were getting through, and he was getting tagged even then. But just the fact that he was able to pull off some of the blocks like that, some of the, doing stuff like that, it was insane. But so what I wanted to show in this video was you're using the Heaven 6 like this, the two arms crossed like this, right? Instead of here, it's here. And you're going to use this to clash into them. So you're going forwards and you're shutting down their punches. If you just stay there and you're trying to block with the Heaven 6, stuff's going to get through. So that was the idea there. And that takes us to the next video, which is stop their punches before they get off. And the technique here is clashing, okay? So you're jamming and pinning their hands so that they can't punch you. But you got to close the distance to do it, and you jam it and pin it. And that technique is something I call clashing. So where does clashing come from? Clashing, to me, is when I think about historical roots of Filipino martial arts. The historical roots it comes from the battlefield. So these guys had swords, spears, shields, that kind of stuff, and they were fighting on the battlefield, just like everybody else all over the world. You go far back enough, that's how we humans fought. And so in that situation, you're going sword to sword against somebody, right? It's not like there's a hospital right there. Even if I win, if the guy cuts me, trying to get back to my village, I may not make it back. So that means I'm not here to have a duel and see who has better skill. What's important here is I need to survive. And in order to do that, this guy has a sword, I have a sword, then what would I do in that case? What did they do? That was the question I asked myself. And I've never obviously gone sword to sword with anybody, and I don't ever want to. But what I have done is I've gone stick to stick with an opponent, okay? We had I did a challenge match that way. And I've only done it a few times, and it's not something I really want to do just because it's super dangerous. We didn't even have any kind of protective gear on. This guy had some Filipino martial arts background. At the time I had some Filipino martial arts background, and we were like, hey, let's test it out. Let's see what happens. So we just went at it. In that situation, I was afraid because I knew if his stick hit me in the head, even if it's a light hit, if it hit me just the right way, my eyeball could pop out. I had heard that from my teacher. My first teacher in 1990, around that time, I remember him saying, hey, these sticks, because I was like, we're going to train with sticks? Well, it's stupid. It's a stick. That's what I thought. I was like, how come we don't get to train with a nunchuck or a sword or something cooler? That was my mentality. But he was like, no, the stick is a very serious, he explained to me, and he was like, the damage here is tremendous, that it could pop an eye out. And I was like, oh. And then, I was like, well, the stick, is that a mace? Is it a representative of a mace? Is that what we're doing? He's like, no, it's sword. This is blade. And I was like, oh, okay, whatever. I was like, but anyway, so I was afraid of the other guy's stick. And I didn't want it to hit me in the face or anything like that. So what I did was, I think, very natural. I jammed it. I hit my stick against his stick as hard as I could, and I just jammed it and got in close so that he can't stick fight with me. That's what I did. That's clashing. I don't know what else, I just gave it that name, but that is what clashing is. And I believe that Filipino warriors did the same thing. If I could do it, they for sure can do it. They did the same thing hundreds and hundreds of years ago. And I think that's very natural. I believe they did it in Europe. I believe every human being, when they fought, that's one of the options, is to clash and neutralize the other guy's weapon. And that's what I did. So then I thought to myself, in Filipino martial arts, everything we do with the weapons, we do empty hand. There's a direct connection. So I was like, why don't I do that empty hand? So if the other guy's a boxer and he's a better boxer than me, why don't I use my empty hands to do this exact same thing? Why don't I do clashing? And I was like, how would I do it? Well, my arms are the weapons now. My hands are the weapons. So why don't I use my hands, my arms, to jam onto his? And when you do that, you have a crossing of the arms. And that's when I was like, wait a minute, is this how trapping? Is this how trapping was made? Is the sticky hands from Wing Chun? In Jeet Kune Do, they have trapping. And in Filipino martial arts, we have hubad, and they have other names. But I was like, is that where this comes from? It comes from clashing? It comes from weapons? I was like, that makes sense to me. And that really, really helped me now start to go, well, maybe I could start using the trapping stuff in full contact. But first, this technique of clashing. In this video, I first wanted to see what Mr. Kevin's instincts was. So I told him, this is the idea of clashing. I didn't tell him what it looks like or how to do it. I just told him, this is the explanation. And I wanted to see his instincts, to see would he do something similar to what I did. And what he did was he would slam my hands down and immediately come in. His wrestling background kicked in. And the idea of clashing is just to jam the hands and pin it. So that's what he did. He jammed and he pinned. So it was great. And you can see it for yourselves in that video clip. And then, of course, we took turns. And then I showed him, like, yes, that's really good, but there's other ways to clash. And that's where my forearms, would hit his, and they're crossed. And I can still go into jam and pin. And the pin part is where we're now like in a grappling type situation. And that's also very, very important. And that is also, to me, the missing ingredient for trapping Chi Sao, the sticky hands done in Wing Chun, is once you put in that grappling energy, then I believe once you start training that way, now those trapping techniques will become realistic. Until then, it's a great exercise, and those are awesome techniques, but in order to make it more combat ready, you need to put in that grappling energy. That's my belief. And that's how I train, and that's how I teach my students too. I teach the traditional trapping stuff, the hubad, that kind of stuff too, without the grappling pressure, the grappling force in there. But then after we do the traditional practice, and that's to me where you could see the techniques, the library. Now I go, let's make it a little bit more combat ready, a little bit more combat realistic. And that's when we start putting in the grappling energy. And anyway, let me go to the next part, which is the Eskrima traditional disarm technique. So once again, on YouTube, I've been noticing a lot of people steal techniques. They even quotes, they'll say something that sounded good that someone else said, and they give no credit at all. And I think that's wrong. We should follow the, I'm not saying because of like money issues or copyright, or that's not what I'm saying. From an educational standpoint, if you're going to say something is something, it's like if you're going to make a point, okay, but where does that come from? You have to cite sources. So if we martial artists are going to be taken seriously, we got to stop just stealing stuff, and we have to cite our sources, okay? So that's why it was important for me in this next video clip that I put up the traditional Filipino martial arts disarm technique to show you guys, the stuff that I came up with later after this clip, which is the force-to-force block and the actual disarm itself. I wanted you guys to see, where does it come from? So in around 1990, okay, at the beginning, so in around that time, I had learned Filipino martial arts, and this branch, the lineage, is Arnis, modern Arnis, from the Professor Remy Presas branch. They had taught me the technique where it was a force-to-force block, which is done like this. You hold the stick with both hands like this. In the video, I'm doing this, I believe. That's just a variation. So, my bad. I should have shown it to you guys like this. But like I said, small variation, whether it's like this or like this. But you do this, and then you snake your arm through, and you wrap around their stick, and you disarm. That is the traditional technique that was taught to me, and yeah, it was very important for me to show you guys that. So now the next one, I go into the very usable Eskrima defense technique, and that is the force-to-force block, okay? So that traditional technique, force-to-force block, and then the disarm, that technique, when I learned it, to me, all the focus went to the disarm. It's like, whoa, you could take the guy's stick away, and now I can have double sticks. Wow, that's so cool. So I focused on the disarm and not on the force-to-force block. And in fact, after my teacher taught that move to me, we never did the force-to-force block. And I've trained with other guys from Kali, Eskrima, Arnis, different branches, different schools. And, some of them knew the force-to-force block. Nobody really used it. Nobody really focused on it. No one likes that move. I mean, it's almost like it's the bastard child, right? And, I was one of them. I didn't really, it's like, okay, whatever. I didn't hate it, I liked it, but it wasn't like I'm going to focus on it. And then one day, I opened my own school, and my students came in, and I was teaching them like basic kickboxing. So I'm holding the focus mitts for them. So one of the things I was doing with the focus mitts is if you hold the focus mitt, they throw a punch, and you just hold it like this, this happens, and your shoulder starts hurting, and you're holding it for multiple students, and then you do this all day long, your shoulder going to get hurt really bad. So what I started doing was I'm holding it. When they throw the punch, boom, I do this. So I meet their punch. I hit their punch down. This way, it doesn't hurt my shoulder. I'm also getting work on timing. So I'm getting practice. They're getting practice. It's a win-win situation. So I try as much as possible to do that. So punches, kicks. Oh, wait a minute. This is the force-to-force block. When I realized that, I was like, I think I could use the force-to-force block in full contact. I think I could use it for real. Like the guy could have a knife try to come at me. I could use this. So then I asked my students, hey, we're going to do an experiment. So I had them, we did it with sticks. We did it with knives. And we even did, instead of a stick, can I use a belt? Can I use a baseball cap? And then I was using the bill of the cap to stab down. It blew me away. And then I was like, you could even do the same thing with a knife. I have a knife, and the spine of the blade, my hand's right here. It's the same motion like this. I'm just slamming it down. And if I could slam down on the weapon, great to defend. But if I could slam down on their arm, even better. So then that's defang the snake. So this is completely still follows the Filipino martial arts creed, the principles, everything. And so all of a sudden now the force-to-force block to me was mega realistic. In fact, it was the way to go. So force-to-force block plus the Muay Thai pads, that's what gave me that idea. And for many years now on YouTube, I've been telling you guys, force-to-force block is the way to go. And so I've been telling you guys this. And then in the next video, self-defense against the knife. I'm doing the exact same thing with Mr. Kevin. We're taking turns. And now we're doing the force-to-force block. One person has a stick, the other person has a knife. In the Philippines, it's common knowledge that the stick is the perfect anti-weapon. But I also believe it's a yin and yang thing. So the knife is also the perfect anti-stick weapon. So that depends on the distance, right? But there's a very strong relationship there with stick and knife. So it's very good to practice this. And this was so important for me to put this video, those two clips up for you guys, because one of the things was, at some point, I've been doing this for years, for many years on YouTube. I've been telling you guys force-to-force block, and I could tell a lot of people just looked, they would watch the videos and be like, yeah, okay, whatever, just another technique. And for me, it was like, no, this is very special. And then one day, I don't remember what year it was, but one day I was on YouTube and I saw a video where there's people that I don't know these people at all. They were doing my technique, and I was like, that's my technique. And they were doing it way better looking than I mean, it looked good. I got to give them credit, you know. It sucks that they stole it, you know. And the reason why I say they stole it from me is because nobody else, like I said, in Filipino martial arts, they showed the force to force block, but nobody did it like that. And nobody was saying this is the way to go and showing it. You know, there were people that knew the technique, but like I said, it was ignored. I was the guy showing it on YouTube. I was blown away by it. And all of a sudden, I see these guys. Now, there's a chance they could have come up on it on their own, but I saw some other things that they did that looked very shady. And that kind of also further made me think, I think they stole it. You know, if they're going to lie about something else, they're probably lying about this too. So anyway, they made it look good. So, you know, my hat goes off to them. And look, I'm not here to complain about that or what. I don't care. Okay. To me, flattery, highest form of, you know, not flattery, sorry. Imitation is the highest form of flattery. So I'm not here to try to sue them or get money, or it's not about the money. Okay. What my concern is, if you're going to steal the move, right, then when you do that, the problem with that is because for me, this is a development, all right? I've been doing this for many, many years, for 3 decades. So people can tell me, oh, you just steal moves, or they can say whatever, but I know the truth. For me, this is a step by step. I've been putting in the time, and it's evolved into something. So I know where it comes from. I know why I did it. I know all the reasons. And if you just steal a move, you don't know that. You don't know where it fits in. So you just have this isolated move that you think is cool, or you think it works great or whatever, but it's just this one thing. It's not a whole game plan. And that's exactly what I'm seeing. In other words, they're teaching it incomplete, which makes it wrong. If they're teaching it wrong, you know, or they're giving the wrong impression. So in this video, I wanted to make sure that you guys get it right. And one of the most important things is you need to learn that, and this is something very basic in Filipino martial arts that you learn early on, is that there's 2 major types of attacks, okay? So the 2 major types of attacks is you have your full swing type of attack, and then you have the boom, where it hits and comes back. So basically in boxing, it would be like a jab versus like a haymaker, okay? So those are the 2 basic types of attacks, and those are the 2 you're going to encounter in the street, okay? Some guy's going to pop you, or someone's going to be, you know, mega powerful punch like that. They're going to swing at you. So that's what you need to deal with. You can't just show one of those and go, you know, this is what to do on the street. That's an incomplete picture. And furthermore, I have to say is start with the swing. Start with the power. We start with the swing in Filipino martial arts, and for good reason. And power it'll teach you the proper body mechanics. And also on the street, you're more likely to encounter power. You're more likely to encounter a full swing than someone who's more disciplined and goes pop, 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 you know. So same with a knife attack, same with a stick or a baseball bat. They're more likely to swing at you. So you got to deal with that first. That's more important. I would say do that. The other one's just as, it is also very important. You got to do both. But if you have to start with one, start with power. That's what I'm saying. And the next thing is, another thing that if you actually practice this, you're going to know that if the other guy does power and you block it with force to force block, if they follow through, they can still hit you. And so for you practicing, if you know this, then if the guy starts blocking your moves, you'll know how to follow through and still hit them, even if they block. So that's very important on your side if you're attacking. And then as the person defending, you can't just do the force-to-force block. You have to have the proper body movement. And that's why it's so important to train with someone who is a legit Filipino martial arts instructor, because when you train with them, you start to see we humans are good at imitating. So we start to, just by being with them, even though they don't explain, you visually imitate and you start learning the body mechanics. Like, okay, the shoulder has to turn, my feet have to be positioned like this. You start to catch on to that. That depends how quickly, how completely, that all depends on the person, but you will start to catch on with that. So that's why it's important to have an instructor right there and see their body mechanics and to see firsthand, oh, this is how you, it's not just a technique, okay? So, yeah, in other words, you have to do the force-to-force block and evade the body at the same time. You can't just do this is, you can't just do that. So anyway, the next stuff, let me move on to is, oh, we finally get to the last one. The wmpyr method of disarm practice. So right here, yeah, now I get to go into the disarm. So if you look at the original technique, right, I said after the force-to-force block, your arm snakes around the stick, the opponent's stick, and then you're going to pry it out of their hand, and that's the disarm. The thing is, if you think about it, the Filipino martial arts, the stick historically was a practice weapon for the sword. Okay, you want to learn the sword, but for practice you use the stick instead, so you don't kill each other. Makes sense. All right, so if you did this technique with a sword, I don't want to wrap my arm around a sword. I'm going to get cut, right? If the other guy had a knife, I don't want to wrap my arm around a knife. So then I thought to myself, then what do? Well, you wrap around their arm. You wrap around their wrist. You don't do it to the weapon. So whether it's a pistol, a rifle, a shotgun, a stick, a baton, a sword, a knife, whatever the weapon is, if you make that adjustment where you're wrapping the arm, you're wrapping the wrist, and not the weapon, it won't matter what weapon they have. You'll be able to use this technique no matter what the weapon. And that is the Filipino martial arts mentality. I could use the Heaven Six with a sword, a knife, pistols, you know, a water bottle, whatever that's in my hand. I use the Heaven Six for that. So that kind of commonality, that is the Filipino way of thinking, where it's very efficient, and I really like that. So same technique, different weapons. So in this case, the disarm, same technique. I don't care what weapon he has, as long as I'm on his arm and not on the weapon. So that's the idea there. That's the modification I made, which is not unique to me. I've seen other people do that with different disarms. But so the next part is the wrenching. The first time I saw wrenching, and wrenching is supposed to come from the Filipino martial arts, and Jeet Kune Do circles. And the first time I saw it was from a Paul Vanek instructional video where he did a wrenching technique, where he did like a trapping movement, and then bam, he basically uppercut it and used this part of the arm to wrench on the guy's elbow like this. And I was like, that is a cool move. That is brutal. And in Filipino martial arts, I don't remember, but I'm pretty sure I saw someone else doing it. That wasn't, I believe maybe they were Jeet Kune Do background, but it was taught as a Filipino martial arts technique. And I was like, wow, I never learned that when I was doing Filipino martial arts. When I was learning Filipino martial arts, I never learned that. So I was like, I definitely want to add this to my arsenal. I really liked it. And so I applied this to the disarm. And when you do that, it just, because I'm wrapping the arm, it's already there. So now we do that, we wrench it. And I was like, the more you wrench on the arm, which in this video clip, I'm sorry, but we couldn't do it. We would hurt each other. So you don't really see us do the wrenching, but in real life, we would be wrenching the crap out of the other person in order to get the disarm. But right here, we're wrapping and we're wrenching a tiny bit, not like we would in real life, but just a tiny bit. And that's important because in Filipino martial arts, we do lock flow. And lock flow is going from, it's a drill to go from joint lock to joint lock to joint lock. And the lock flow that I teach you guys is you wrap around the arm and you go shoulder, elbow, and wrist. You just slide down the arm. That's all it is. So right here, you see us doing on the wrist. Okay, so some of it was on the elbow, but then we go to the wrist and you compromise. We're not trying to break the wrist joint or the elbow joint. We are disrupting the structure, making the structure weak by wrenching repeatedly. And what that does is if you make the structure weak, their grip becomes weak. If the grip is weak, now I can disarm. If the grip is not weak, you can't, you're not going to be able to disarm. So it's that simple. It's just very, very logical. And another way that I figured this out was when I was trying to do lock flow for full contact. I was like, okay, going from one joint lock to the next, we do that in like submission grappling, Brazilian jiu-jitsu. We do that. Okay, transition. We transition from one technique to the next, right? You go from a triangle to an arm bar, maybe switch to a knee bar and back to a triangle, or, you know, you transition from technique to technique and you're fishing for one, right? Okay, so in grappling, that works. But lock flow in the stand-up, it doesn't. So I was kind of like, or what I see is, what I'm saying is I don't see it in full contact. Why is that? And when you look at MMA, UFC matches and stuff, you don't see a whole lot of standing joint locks. You see it on the ground, but you don't really see it standing. It may start standing, but they finish on the ground. So how come I don't see it standing? So then it's like, what's wrong with lock flow? And then I started going, well, I don't think it's what's wrong with lock flow. I think it's the way they're doing it. If you try to do those joint locks, standing joint locks, like you do on the ground, where you know, squeezing and trying to get an armbar or a rear naked choke, I don't think it's going to happen. Why is that? Well, look at judo, where it's stand-up grappling. How fast do they throw? All those techniques are super fast. So then I was like, if you need to do the joint locks that fast, how can I do that? Because it doesn't give me time to tap them out. And then I was like, wrenching. Wrenching's the answer. So all the joint locks, if you do it like wrenching, now you could do the stand-up joint locks. I'm not trying to tap them out, but I'm just adding shock to the joint. And if you do it that way, it only takes a split second. But you could do it over and over again. So then I was like, now I can lock flow in full contact. Now I could do disarms in full contact. So that was very, very important for me. And anyway, we were just trying to, this is not sparring, obviously, but we were just trying to get some more practice doing that in a little bit more live movement, rather than just, I feed you an attack and then I stop and I let you do the technique. Now you feed me an attack and you freeze, and then, you know, after the stab, after the attack, you freeze, and then you let me do whatever I want, and then we switch back and forth, back and forth. So rather than that, going a little bit more realistic. So anyway, we had a blast making these videos. The next set of videos I did with Mr. Pedro, who is an amazing martial artist also. And yeah, that's all filmed, and I still have to edit, and I will be uploading those next week. So I hope you enjoyed these videos with Kevin, and please look forward to some videos with Mr. Pedro next week. So that's it for now. Thank you for viewing, and take care, folks.